Hello and welcome to MOS Live. I'm so glad that you're joining us today. Today's Ask a Scientist is all about the game of chess in the age of artificial intelligence. And in a little bit, we will welcome our guest scientist from MIT's Center for Brains, Minds, and Machines to answer all of your questions. But first, my name is Meg. My pronouns are she and hers. And if you're joining us on Zoom, please feel free to start entering your questions at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you'd like captions, you can also access those by clicking the caption button at the bottom and clicking on show subtitles. And if you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook, we're really happy that you're tuning in, but unfortunately, we won't be able to see your questions at this time. But first, let's get started. You don't need to know how to play chess to join in today, but I am going to give you just a little bit of background to kick things off. So let's All right, so chess is a very old game, and it's played on a board with 64 squares arranged in this 8x8 checkerboard pattern. Two opponents set up their chess pieces on opposite sides of the board, and their goal is to capture the other player's king. Now, there are 6 different kinds of pieces: a king, a queen, 2 bishops, 2 knights, 2 rooks, and 8 pawns. And these different pieces can all move across the board according to different rules. So for example, a rook can move only along columns or rows, any number of spaces until it encounters an opposing piece. A bishop, on the other hand, can only move along diagonal paths. And a knight can move in this sort of L-shaped pattern, 2 over and 1 up, or 2 down and 1 over, or 1 up and 2 over. You get the idea. Now, because chess is governed by all of these rules, people have been fascinated by the idea of programming a machine to play chess for a really long time. So I'll show you one example. This is El Ajedrecista, which is Spanish for the chess player. It was presented by Torres Quevedo in 1914. And there's actually a vertically mounted chessboard right there in the middle with a bunch of switchboard plugs. And you might be thinking, that doesn't look like a computer that I'm used to, but it was programmed to play a very specific limited version of chess called King and Rook versus King, or KRK. The computer would have 2 chess pieces, a king and a rook, and the human opponent would have 1 chess piece, just a king. And here's how this computer could play that game. During each turn, it would walk through a series of questions to decide how to move next. If the opponent's king is in the same column of the board as the rook, or close to it, it would move the rook horizontally. And if not, it would ask another question: how much vertical distance is there between the rook and the opposing king? More than 1 square? It moves the rook 1 square towards the opposing king. If there's exactly 1 square, then it moves to the next question. How far apart are the 2 kings? And you don't need to know the details of this, but so on and so on down the chain. It would follow this string of decisions until it could make a move. And this kind of chart with all of these branching possibilities is called a decision tree, which I've added upside down so you can see all of the little branches descending downward. Now, the KRK version of chess is much, much simpler than standard chess. An actual decision tree for that would not fit on one slide. And it's really easy to see why when you think about how many moves there are. In standard chess, there's an average of more than 30 moves a player can make with a given board. And for each of those 30-something moves, the other player can respond with another 30-something possible moves. So one full turn generates about 1,000 possible arrangements of the pieces. Really good chess players, though, try to think ahead several moves, meaning that the number of possibilities grows exponentially. Thinking ahead 2 turns, the number of possibilities is 1 million, and a full 5 turns, which is what many human players strive for, generates 1 quadrillion possibilities. So we don't have our cute little decision tree anymore. Instead, we have an enormous branching network of possibilities. And for a computer to play chess well, it has to evaluate all of these possibilities to choose the best path forward. And it has to do all of those calculations fast enough to obey the time control rules of chess, just like the human players. Over the last few decades, a couple of areas of development have given computers a boost. So, for example, computing power and speed has advanced, and that alone has allowed chess machines to steadily improve. But it also matters how you evaluate those outcomes. If you're just given a chessboard with a bunch of pieces on it, you can probably say something about whether it looks better for one side or the other based on which pieces are left and whether they're rooks or queens or pawns. But there are a lot of different ways to program a computer to make that calculation, and it makes a difference. And finally, another way to get faster at evaluating all of the leaves on the tree is to just have fewer branches. And there have been a lot of innovative strategies to prune the tree and ignore whole branches that aren't likely to be very helpful. So with these constant improvements, computer chess has gotten better and better. And just to give a couple of examples, MacHack was the first chess machine to earn itself an official rating as a player. And through several iterations, Bell started regularly defeating chess masters in the 1980s. But one big milestone you may have heard of came in the late 90s, when for the first time, the reigning world champion of chess, Garry Kasparov, was defeated in a match by the IBM supercomputer Deep Blue. And one thing that Deep Blue had going for it came down again to processing speed. It was built as a massively parallelized system, meaning that it had many, many processors all working together in parallel to split up all those calculations so they could be done much faster. Kasparov wasn't especially thrilled to lose that match, and he famously said Deep Blue was as intelligent as an alarm clock, though losing to a $10 million alarm clock didn't make me feel any better. And he had a point. Chess AIs don't play chess very elegantly. They're built to search very thoroughly for the best option and as fast as possible. And they don't make the same kinds of mistakes that humans do either. So it might be kind of surprising to those of us who are blown away by its complexity, but chess is actually no longer a particularly hard game for computers. A much bigger challenge for artificial intelligence is the game of Go, because unlike chess, it's really impossible to evaluate the strength of all those branching possibilities just by looking at the board at a certain time. And in 2017, there were big headlines that Google's AI AlphaGo beat the Go expert Lee Sedol in a 5-game match. And that was truly another milestone for artificial intelligence. And maybe someone will ask our guest more about that in the Q&A coming up, because I'm going to introduce him now and invite him to turn on his camera. Welcome to MOS Live. So this is Dr. Gabriel Kreinen. He is the Associate Director of the MIT Center for Brains, Minds, and Machines. He is also a professor in the Department of Ophthalmology at Harvard Medical School, as well as a faculty member at Children's Hospital, the Department of Neurology at Harvard Medical School, the Center for Brain Science, the Swartz Center for Theoretical Neuroscience, and the Mind, Brain, and Behavior Initiative at Harvard. And very relevant to our purposes today, he was the 1984 Metropolitan Chess Champion in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in the category of less than 15 years old. So welcome to MOS Live, Dr. Kreiman. Please tell us a little more about your area of research and your experience with chess.
Thank you very much, Meg, for the very kind introduction, and also for the very lucid and fantastic history of chess and machines playing chess. As you mentioned, I was born in Buenos Aires in Argentina. I did my undergrad there. Then I did what's called a PhD in California, and then moved to Boston for further training and eventually to set up my own research lab. So I've always been fascinated by science in general, and especially by the functioning of the human brain. I think this is one of the biggest challenges of our time. And as a fundamental aspect of trying to understand ourselves and how our brains work, I'm very interested in artificial intelligence, in the notion of how we can translate some of our findings about brain function into building algorithms and training machines to think the way we do, and training artificial intelligence algorithms that can accomplish all kinds of cognitive tasks in the way that we do. I'm an amateur chess player right now. I play with my children. I play with my iPad every now and then, but I don't play chess professionally anymore. I used to play chess competitively when I was a kid. Maybe I was as old as some of the people here in the audience. I spent countless hours training, playing against friends, playing in tournaments, reading books. In those days, I didn't have really computers to play chess against. They were too expensive. So I trained by learning both from books and from teachers and from people. I was passionate about it. I was playing many hours. And it's always been an enigmatic and fascinating game for me. In a similar vein to what you described for the very famous Garry Kasparov, when I grew older and started playing chess against computers, I quickly realized that computers could beat me quite easily at chess. And that was quite a shocking moment for me. But at the same time, I think it was super exciting. I think this is humbling, but it's also opening the doors to the enormous possibilities that we have when we start to train and use our scientific knowledge to try to build machines that can really push the frontiers of cognitive function and use that for all kinds of applications, from clinical applications all the way to building intelligent machines to help elder people, to help in terms of teaching and education, to help in terms of doing classification of different types of images for self-driving cars. AI is everywhere now. And a lot of that can be traced back to the idea of how can we train machines to think the way we do. And chess has always been a prime example of that through the decades. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to answering all your questions.
Thank you. I have a couple just to start off, although my first one was what got you interested in chess, and I feel like you've answered that very well, and it was really neat to hear about. So I have more of a question about the connection between the human mind and artificial intelligence, and what do you see as the, which direction does it go, for example, and how do you think about that connection when you're thinking about AI and our own brains?
So that's a great question, and I am especially interested in the intersection between studying the human brain and studying AI. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. There doesn't necessarily have to be a connection. It could be, in principle, that we realize that we can build AI machines that are quite extraordinary at doing all sorts of tasks in ways that are completely new, that are not directly related to the human brain. Just as an analogy, when humanity started thinking about how to build contraptions that could fly, Leonardo da Vinci was heavily inspired by birds and how birds fly and how they flap their wings. But eventually, the types of airplanes that we have today don't flap their wings the way birds do. So we took inspiration. We learned about the basic physics of how we can put objects in the sky and have them stay there. We learned about something called fluid dynamics and so on. But then after that inspiration, then engineers took over and were able to build devices that were different. So in that sense, AI could potentially also take that direction and sort of discover its own rules, its own algorithms, its own ways of doing things. For the moment, however, until we get there, I think we are in a way in the pre-Leonardo era of AI. So we're still taking a lot of inspiration from biology and especially from brain science and neuroscience. So if we can figure out the types of algorithms, the type of circuits that happen inside our brains that are responsible for playing chess or different aspects of cognition, and then we can try to emulate and build machines that are similar to us, and thus solve all kinds of problems that seem to be beyond our reach, and then all of a sudden become possible by taking inspiration and thinking about brain function.
I think we have a couple of viewer questions, so I think I will jump over to those. And we'll have to see if either of these are your specialty, but Joseph wants to know, how can I get better at bullet chess? So I don't know if you could explain a little what bullet chess is first.
So basically, people play chess and there's a time constraint. So there's only so much time that you have to play your next move. And there's a variety of different levels of chess, of different times intervals. So people play sometimes games where each player has only 1 minute, and then if the time is over, you lose. Some people play 5-minute games. Some people play games that last, let's say they have 2 hours to play the entire game. So bullet chess, I think, is one of these varieties. I think Joseph may correct me if I'm wrong, but I think bullet is the one where you have only 1 minute per player for the whole game. I don't know how to get significantly better. I wish I knew. I'd like to get better myself. So I think the old saying of practice, practice, practice. I think it's one of the best advices that you can get. Another thing that chess players do a lot of is chess problems. So a chess problem is, for example, I set the pieces on the board, and I tell you that the white is to play, and they have 2 moves to do checkmate, or 4 moves to do checkmate, or there is a way in which the white can play and draw the game, or they can win. So these are called chess puzzles. And these are extremely instructive and very, very good practice for people to learn. Some people like to memorize openings. I don't personally, but that's people who play bullet chess. They people who play very fast. It's typical these days that maybe the first 5, 10, 20, maybe even 30 moves, it's all memorization. They don't even look at the board. They basically just memorize all. I personally, I don't think that that's much fun, but if you're serious and you really want to get better at bullet chess, a lot of people do that too. I think it's more fun to just learn about strategy than just having to memorize different types of openings. But
I have a follow-up question. Is it harder or easier to beat a computer at bullet chess versus another timing of the game?
I think it's harder. I think well, it depends on the computer, but I think most computers today, their processing speed is astounding. They can compute things extremely fast. So the magic of human cognition does not seem to have to do with the number of computing elements. So in a computer, those are called transistors. Those are the fundamental units of computation. In our brains, those are called neurons. Neurons are the cells that are in our brains that are responsible for everything we do. So the numbers of elements, of computing elements in computers, are pretty close to the ones in the human brain. They will probably surpass that soon. The speed of computation is also, if anything, faster in computers. The magic of human cognition seems to be in the incredibly rich and exciting connectivity between the neurons, how they talk to each other to accomplish their goals. And that's what learning is all about. And that's probably why ultimately in the majority of tasks, except chess and Go and many others, at least for now, humans are still better than machines. But in general, I think that speed is probably not where we're going to beat computers. Computers are super fast, so it's better for you to take your time and think about the game.
That makes sense. Since you mentioned Go, I do wonder if you might describe why is Go a different problem than chess, or what are some of the techniques besides the sort of brute force methods that I described about tackling chess? What kinds of methods are or have been employed in that regime because it's a different kind of problem? If you could give us a brief description.
So I should say I have played chess a lot. I barely know the rules of Go, so I'm not a Go player. So one of the challenges I think in Go is that the size of the number of possibilities essentially gets combinatorially larger, much faster than in chess. So you were talking about the number of moves, that number 30 that you put in there. That's basically how many options you have. And basically, that's the number that governs the exponential explosion. That number that if you have one move, you have 30, then you have 30 times 30, then it's 30 times 30 times 30, and so on. So that number becomes much larger very quickly in Go. But the type of algorithms modulo a couple of tricks. I think the types of algorithms that have succeeded for machines to play Go are very similar to the ones in chess. So it goes back to the three elements that you put out there. So it's about how you do search in these decision trees. How do you evaluate the position? You look at the position and you have to say, is this better or worse than before? And then doing those things, and then the pruning part, which I think doing those three things in an efficient way.
Thanks. We got a couple more questions here. Let's to see if you know your chess trivia, but Wesley, age 8, asks, when was chess first invented? Do you have a guess at that?
So chess, there were several different versions. It was modified a little bit over time, but roughly speaking, it was about in the 7th century in India. That's when the chess that we know today was basically played first. There was an interesting story with chess about a very rich and very powerful king who wanted to reward the person who invented chess, because this was such a fun game, and basically he wanted to reward him and said, choose anything that you want in the kingdom, and I will give it to you. So this person said to the king, what I want is just the following. So I just want 1 grain of sand in the first position in the board. Then in the second one, I want twice that is 2 grains of sand. And then in the next one, twice that is 4. And then the next one, 8, and so on and so forth. Okay. And the king said, oh, that's very easy. That's all you want. But it turns out that if you actually do the computation and you keep multiplying by 2, it turns out that there is not enough sun in the world to be able to fulfill that petition. Basically, you have to multiply 2 by 2 by 2 64 times, because there are 64 positions in the board, and that gives you more sun than there is in the entire. But it's about, the answer to your question is about the year 600 in India.
Wow. All right, we have another few questions. Thanks for sending these in. And again, on Zoom, if you're with us here, you can enter those questions using the Q&A box at the bottom, or the button at the bottom of your screen. We have a question here. How many moves ahead can a computer anticipate? I know that number has changed over time, I imagine.
I actually don't know the exact number, so I think it changes a lot depending on which computer you're talking about. But roughly speaking, many sort of even my iPad can think ahead about anywhere from 4 to 10 moves, depending on the number of pieces and the position. But the number is on the order. Let's say an amazing computer can think ahead on the order of 6 to 10 moves. That's already a very powerful number to play chess very, very seriously.
That's what I was reading was that serious chess players like aim for at least 5, and I know computers can do that now, but that's like I was saying before, that's so many possibilities just with the 5 that you think it really multiplies exponentially. So I have a question here that's really interesting about if there's one thing to say, how do you teach a computer to play chess well? But why would you want to do this? What can we learn other things by teaching a computer chess?
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So I think that the same type of one thing that's happening in AI research now is that we're finding out that the same flavor of algorithms, the same mathematics, basically, that allowed us to play chess competitively or go competitively, are being used for all sorts of other applications. One flavor of this, for example, one exciting application recently is the notion of trying to predict the 3-dimensional structure of proteins. So the proteins are basically the building blocks of cells that basically conduct all these all the biochemical functions inside our cells. So one very difficult problem is how to predict their shape in space, how they're folded in space. People have been some of the most brilliant physicists and biologists and mathematicians have been working on this for decades. And now the same group of people and using similar mathematics and similar algorithms have been able to come up with solutions that seem to be better than any of the previous algorithms using some of these ideas. So some of these algorithms can help us not only play chess and Go, but they're now being used for different types of pattern recognition problems, for clinical diagnosis, and essentially everything we do has to do with cognition, and we're trying to, the field is trying to move towards investigating how we can do all the amazing things that we do with our brains, and using some of these ideas as starting points.
Mm-hmm. Right, I've got another question here, and I don't know the answer to this, but are chess and checkers actually related, or are those two very different games? Do you know?
The games are very different. I don't know the history of checkers. If I were to guess, I would say because it's a simpler game that came earlier, and it's the same board where you can actually play both. But the games are very different. So in checkers, you only have one kind of piece, basically, and the kind of moves that you can do are very constrained. Checkers can be solved computationally much easier and faster than chess. It's a much simpler problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are just getting to the end of our time, so I want to get to our last question here. And we always have this parting question for guests before we say goodbye, but do you have any advice for our younger audience members who might be interested in pursuing a career in science, or even specifically AI or cognitive science?
I think this is a fantastic time to be starting and thinking about a career in science. In a way, I'm a little bit jealous about all of you because of all the amazing things that people will discover over the next decades. The kind of tools and possibilities now are seemingly endless. And I think I'm a firm believer that science will change the world and will make the world a better place. So I'm particularly interested in AI and figuring out how the brain works. But this will have implications for clinical disorders, for building self-driving cars, for building robots that can help people. It's endless. You can even apply this to other kinds of science if you have a robot that's sufficiently intelligent. So this is an exciting time. Learn as much as you can and especially enjoy it, because it's a great time to be in science.
Thank you. That's a great answer. All right, well, that's all the time that we have tonight. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your experience and these very interesting overlapping topics. And I'm going to invite you to say goodbye to our guests now. Thank you, everyone, for all of your questions.
Thank you very much. All right. Thanks.
All right, so we will we have a ton of great stuff going on at MOS at Home, so please follow us on social media or check out our website at mos.org/MOS at Home. And if you enjoyed this program, please consider supporting the Museum of Science by visiting us at engage.mos.org/welcome. Your support will help us provide science experiences online and help us ensure that this content can be accessed from home at no cost. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for our wonderful guest scientists. We had a great time with you today, and we can all say goodbye to our viewers now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.